Okay, I've got here the Hephaestus station featured in the last video. The question here was, how did I get this here ring onto this station so that it would actually fit? Because you may have noticed this ring is of an odd size, 3.75. I guess you can scale it down to 2.5. Let's see, how small does it go? Your options are 2.5 meters and 3.75. And that looks like it. Okay, so I have this one here. It's 3.75 meters. If we deploy it, well, actually, first before we deploy it, let's get rid of these things. This is just so I could put it on the launch pad and then, you know, cheat it into space, since there'd be no way that I would, you know, launch this thing. Normally I would just construct it, but I just threw it together really quick so I could make a video. But anyway, let me show you what it looks like when it's fully deployed. Now this is part of the Interstellar mod there. This piece right here, as you can see, the highlighted green part, it's separated from, you know, it's got one of these warp cores on top at also 3.75. So, you know, it fits nicely with 3.75 meter diameter stuff. You can see it's almost done locking there. Okay. Alright, so that's what it looks like when it's fully deployed. Now, as far as what we've got this connected to, I do believe, yeah, okay. So, root parts, this guy right there. We got a warp core right there. And so, top side, it's just, you know, attached to a 3.75 meter warp core. So let's put that back on. When we come down here, this part is the Advanced Mobile Processing Lab. You find that it's the Mobile Processing Lab. Joint Development Inc. I actually, I don't know which mod this is part of. I think this one is possibly part of the Interstellar pack, but it might not be. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to go into the files and look. But that's just what I used down here, but any similar sized part would work. As you can see, it's the same size as the regular, or same diameter, radius, circumference, and all that. Just a different length from the regular mobile processing lab. But they're both, you know, 2.5 meter parts. So what I have is a 3.5 meter warp ring, a 3.5 meter as far as the connection point, particle accelerator centrifuge ring with a habitable, you know, spot, and then directly below that I have an adapter. So let's show you the adapter. Take off these. That's just the antimatter collector, and then you can see that I've got an FL-A151S. Is that an S or a 5? I can't tell. Fuel tank adapter. So that's that one right there. Jebediah Crewman's Junkyard and Spacecraft Parts. So generally it comes in looking like that. Okay, it's just I think it's a 1.25 meter to a 1.87, something like, yeah, 1.87 meter at the base. So what I did is I scaled that up such that it is 375 at the base, and then I used the S key twice to flip it around, and then boom, you got a 375 to 2.5 adapter, a 375 to a 2.5 adapter. So on top, whoops, let's actually do that. So if we remove the adapter piece, we have a 375 base plate here, and then down here it's a refrigerator unit scaled to 2.5. So we're going, you know, 375 to 2.5, and we use this FL-A151S fuel tank adapter that goes from 375 to 2.5. so that we can just plop that right back on there. And then, you know, I of course strut this to the grandparent part. I didn't rigid attach this one. I suppose you could, just to make sure, but this one seemed to turn and manage itself really well in testing, so I didn't rigid attach everything. I just grandparent part strutted parts that I felt were important. But basically, that's really all there is to it. Is just you know, you got a 3.75 meter part. Let's undeploy that, and then I just use an adapter that goes from 375 to 2.5. There are a few different choices you have depending on what you exactly want it to look like. Generally, a fuel tank is going to be the best adapter. Let me see if filter extensions gives me any other options. Yeah, with tweak scale and different parts there, you'll be able to find a suitable. There we go. You should be able to find a suitable candidate there. See if we put that on there. We scale that down to 1875. That makes this a 2.5 meter to 1875 adapter. So let's show you what that looks like. 1875. Oh wait, that's not right. That's actually not right. That's not calculating correctly. Yeah, these two parts apparently don't line up that way. Okay, so maybe there's a little bit of weird going on as far as how these actually line up, but you can always just take, with tweak scale, you can just do incremental adjustments, and then boom, 2.8 meters, I guess, instead of 2.75, so a little mix up on that. But then those two would fit together, and you can put another part down there, strut appropriately, and you're good. So let's get rid of those since we don't need them anymore. Put this back on here, and then that was four times, and then we just plop them right there, and yeah, that was it. And then, you know, going down the rest of the way, it's just, let's see, what we got right here are these radial attachment points. So that's going to be inside there, and then, you know, a fuel tank attached to that to come out here. And then the little hex cores you can put, you know, interchange, you know, different fuel tanks there depending on what you might need this station to produce for you. Now, the biggest challenge you're going to find if you want to launch this sucker into space is this ring right here just being difficult to work with. Let's go ahead and do that. Where's the... Is it in the utility item? Where is that? Definitely forgot exactly where to find that particular part. Might take me a second. It's definitely not going to be in coupling. It's a payload, ground. Is it an electrical thing? It's got to be a utility item. I feel that would make the most sense. Do we have a search function? Alright, KSPI. It's going to be in here somewhere. Probably passed it already. There it is. Okay, so after all that, biggest challenge you're going to find is this thing when stowed, when undeployed, is going to be weird. Like, where do you put the rocket, you know? You're going to put the rocket here, and then, like, another rocket over here, or something. Do you take two of these? You know, is that the idea? Like, you take this one, and then, let's see, where's that? Let me go down, find, there's that. Do you do something like that, maybe? So that it's sort of balanced? Maybe like 3 of them? Or 4 of them? Do you do that? And then try to launch that into space? Like, I don't know exactly what to tell you as far as constructing something like this in a manner that you could actually just launch it up into the air with that big bad boy sticking out the side. You might consider something like, you know, turning it like this, right? And then maybe some docking ports and then some angled adapters so you have rockets coming down this way, so it's like, it's a very crude interpretation of what I'm trying to say here. Do that, and then I'm just grabbing random parts just to give you an idea, not actually expecting this to actually do anything. Grab an engine that looks like an engine. That one. So generally, like, you know, something like this where, like, you know, maybe throw some staging in there or whatever, but you know, like, launch this sucker like that, you know, using appropriate, you know, engines and fuels and stuff, but, like, you know, just pop this sucker, you know, with rockets on both sides, launch it straight up, and then have these with decouplers that come off, and maybe some sort of, you know, guidance unit that RCSs it back into spot. Or you just launch this into space with a docking port on either end. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Let's do that. Here, let's do that, and we do that, and then where's coupling? All right, so that's the issue you're going to run into, is the size of that docking port, and you can't change those. So that right there is probably going to be your biggest challenge. So again, what I would recommend with something like that is take your fuel tank here, put that there. That's, again, it's the A151S. It might be part of the Interstellar pack. It might be part of stock. It might be part of Interstellar fuel switch. I'll have to look through all the game files to figure it out, but if you can't find it on your own. But I feel like it's a really common part. Might be stock. But you just scale that up, and then your docking port fits right on there. So it'll be tapered here, so maybe you want, you know, a reaction ring. And if you're using tweak scale, and you should be if you're using Interstellar, because you're going to have some challenges if you're not using tweak scale. Then boom, you do that, and then you do that, and then if you want, you can just put that right there, set a hotkey so that this gets staged. Yeah, port enable staging, and you're in business. You launch this thing into the air, you stage it, and you just leave it there, and then everything else you fly up on a regular rocket with, you know, RCS or whatever, and you dock it and build appropriately using this as your core. That, I feel, would be the simplest way to construct this in pieces, you know, through launches, is using a dual, like, side-by-side system to get it into space. It weighs a lot. You know, that's a lot, so you're going to need some serious rocket on here. Not this puny thing right here, but, like, you know, some serious rocket, some actual rocket action going on. So I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna, you know, build this and try to figure out a way to. I feel that's more of a launch techniques tutorial. I'm more of a, you know, hey, here's the cool sci-fi stuff you can do with KSP Interstellar Extended, and I'll show you how it works. But as far as constructing orbital space stations and stuff, that's more of a thing I do in my own campaigns, and I encourage you to do the same and show me how you accomplish these amazing feats of ridiculous technology. Anyway, hope this helps out. That's just showing you how to possibly introduce this here centrifuge ring to your games in order to produce neat looking stations that incorporate it, such as this one. Let's go ahead and take these off again and give you one last look at what that looks like. Deploy. There we go. And that's it. And again, since this thing does spin, that does put torque on your vessel. So you want to make sure you have a good way to counter that. These Alcubierre drives, the Alcubierre drives, or however you say that, they have a lot of torque. They are your reaction wheel of choice. If you take a look here, as far as the center of mass on this vessel, it's a little bit more, it's not exactly in the middle of the vessel itself. So this warp core down here is smaller than this one up here, giving this more torque up here, less down here, and then just below the center of mass is a tiny bit of torque from the computer core itself. It looks weird, it's not lined up with like everything right on the nose, but what's going on here is this is producing the most torque to keep the top end stable, while this sucker is rotating. So this is putting a lot more torque up here that this has to handle, along with the additional weight or mass that exists up here. This is just the fulcrum. This is a center point offset from the center of mass to give a little bit more pull down here. So stability is up here with steering down here is basically what's going on. And then you also have to take into account that when this thing rotates, your radiators will be extended and they will rotate as well, and they will produce torque down here. You probably saw that in the last video, where when this thing turned, the radiator fins all turned in tandem with it, and you saw that it didn't wobble. It can survive warp, and it can, rotate, barrel roll, do all kinds of turns without any issues. And all that is just making sure that its center of mass, it doesn't have to be exactly in the middle of the fulcrum, but it shouldn't be too far. And if it is too far, you got to compensate with extra torque. And then from there, just make sure that the middle part is perfect. Okay, you have to make sure that your center of mass is in the center as far as like looking down it. That is the most important part, because this thing is essentially a cylinder. It's an oddly shaped cylinder, but overall it's a cylinder. So it needs to make sure its center of mass is absolutely in the center of that cylinder, long ways on its rotational point axis. And then it will be a stable vessel, no matter which way it turns. Because if you have this little ball too much towards one side or the other, this spinning will produce a wobble that will just increase and increase, and it will just, out in space, it's just not going to stop. So it's going to wake the Kraken, and it's going to shake your vessel apart. And it's not a bug. That should happen. that should happen. So just make sure everything is centered. And all that requires is symmetry. Just whenever you put a part on, make sure it's balanced on the other side. But that's basic stuff. Everybody knows how to make a rocket by now. But as far as this big ring here that we were at, that someone asked, that Banjo Gate actually asked about, I put it on here with an adapter, a fuel tank adapter, and then made sure it was auto-strutted to that adapter, or to the grandparent part, and made sure to balance it with enough reaction torque to keep this vessel from shaking itself apart. Oh yeah, and I did make a huge error. This thing right here requires a diode beam generator, diode laser beam generator of some sort. You need to put a beam generator. The gyrotron actually would be better, because this thing I think is better for microwaves. Yeah, expand microwave. The gyrotron is what you actually want to put on this vessel, or put on with this dish right here, because this will not actually transmit power without it. So what I should have done when I was building this vessel is that, and then that. And now this vessel or this station can actually transmit power. The one that I've got up in orbit right now does not. So it cannot be used as a Death Star to microwave planets because it cannot transmit power without the gyrotron. You can also put a diode laser beam array, but I think that's actually for this part. Yeah, that's for the diode beam thingy right there. You want the gyrotron to produce microwave beams so that you can send microwave power using your multi-bandwidth dishes. These will also use other bandwidth besides microwaves, and then just use a different beam transmitter. And that's it for this one. The actual next video that I will produce is going to cover it's going to cover the magnetic scoop and a vessel that takes advantage of that. And I'm actually going to get started on that right now, but that'll be in a separate cut of videos. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.